The reign of Vladimir Putin has been marked by controversy and power, but could this truly be the end? In the ever-shifting global politics, few political leaders have commanded as much attention and eyes of the media as Vladimir Putin. His leadership has been a defining feature of Russia's recent history, marked by significant geopolitical moves and domestic policies that have both garnered support and sparked outrage. However, recent events suggest that Putin's era may be closing, and the implications are profound. Putin is considered responsible for disturbance in the shape of war in the world. The tensions within the Kremlin rise and international pressure mounts. Signs of a dramatic power shift are becoming increasingly apparent. High-profile defections, public protests, and growing dissent within Putin's inner circle hint at a weakening grip on his once unassailable authority. People have fed off with his dictatorship over the years. Key figures within Russia's political landscape are making bold moves, and the public's dissatisfaction is reaching unparalleled levels. Could this be the end of Putin's long-standing dominance? We analyze expert opinions, insider reports, and the reactions from global leaders to paint a comprehensive picture of what might come next for Russia. For over 2 decades, Vladimir Putin has been a dominant force in global politics, shaping Russia's trajectory with a firm hand. However, recent events indicate a potential turning point that could spell the end of his tenure. In this comprehensive analysis, we explore the unfolding drama within Russia, featuring exclusive journalist interviews and expert quotes that shed light on this critical juncture. As economic hardships is getting worse due to international sanctions and internal mismanagement, public dissatisfaction in Russia is at an all-time high. Massive protests have erupted across major cities, with citizens demanding change and accountability. Anna Politkovskaya, a renowned Russian journalist, provides a poignant perspective. The people's patience is wearing thin. The economic struggles and political repression have reached a tipping point. This isn't just about opposition leaders anymore. It's about ordinary Russians wanting a better future. Mark Galeotti, an expert on Russian politics, comments, the cracks within Putin's inner circle are becoming more visible. When trusted allies start to jump ship, it signals serious internal discontent and a potential unraveling of his power. The international community's response to Putin's actions, particularly in Ukraine, has been swift and severe. Sanctions have crippled the economy, and diplomatic isolation has left Russia more vulnerable than ever. Former U.S. Ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, shares his view. The combination of economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation is taking its toll. Putin's ability to navigate these waters is diminishing, and his options are becoming limited. Opposition leaders, emboldened by the growing unrest, are rallying support both domestically and internationally. Figures like Alexei Navalny have become symbols of resistance despite facing severe repression and imprisonment. Pavel Felgenhauer, a military analyst, states, "The loyalty of the military has always been crucial for Putin." If these divisions continue to grow, it could lead to a scenario where the military support can no longer be taken for granted. Pavel further stated, Putin has to take serious decisions in order to boost military confidence. Russian President Vladimir Putin said in an interview that a complete and final end to the Ukraine conflict rather than some kind of truce or ceasefire. Putin, however, reiterated his demand that Ukrainian forces must withdraw from the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia regions during a press conference in Moscow after meeting with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Russia is committed to the complete and definitive resolution of the conflict. The conditions for this are outlined in my speech to the Foreign Ministry: the withdrawal of all troops from the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia regions. There are other conditions which are a subject for consideration in the course of possible joint work, he noted. Putin argued that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky avoids peace talks because doing so would require him to lift martial law and hold a presidential election, and his chances of winning are close to zero. Regarding Russia's relations with the EU, Putin said they are currently at the lowest ebb, and that he has discussed the future security architecture in Europe with Orban. During the talks, the Russian president said the Hungarian prime minister primarily expressed Western views, including those on Ukraine. We perceive the prime minister's visit as an attempt to restore dialogue and give it an additional impetus, Putin said. For his part, Orban said Hungary considers ensuring peace in Europe its main task during the presidency of the EU Council. For this purpose, he came to Moscow. I wanted to know what is the shortest way to end the war, and I wanted to know the president's opinion on 3 issues. What does he think about the existing peace initiatives on Ukraine, the possibility of a ceasefire and peace talks? What should be the order to hold them, and the vision of Europe after the war, he said. Vladimir Putin has said Russia takes Donald Trump's declaration that he could end the war completely seriously, although he doesn't know the details of the proposals. The U.S. presidential candidate previously claimed he could create peace in 24 hours if he made it to the White House. Although Russian President Vladimir Putin's war of conquest in Ukraine has failed spectacularly, he remains committed to the fantasy that the old Russian Empire can be recreated. That means neither Ukraine nor the rest of Europe will have peace until he and his political project are soundly defeated. Time and again, Putin has declared that there is no historical justification for Ukraine, since it comprises territories that were long held by the Russian Empire. But something similar can be said of countries across Europe today. Many previously fell under the yoke of the Ottoman, Austro-Hungarian, Wilhelmine, or Russian empires. And globally, the vast majority of the 193 countries that make up the United Nations became independent only in the aftermath of World War II. In the historical period that preoccupied Putin, many of today's countries did not exist even in people's imaginations. When Putin launched his war of conquest, he obviously expected Ukraine to fold quickly. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was to be dispensed with, and a Russian puppet government was to be installed within the space of a few weeks. While Western financial support and military supplies have undoubtedly been critical to Ukraine's defense, what matters most are the Ukrainian people's high morale and determination to defend their country. With Russia holding a presidential election in March, Putin needs to make a credible argument that victory in his war is not a pipe dream. He has put Russia's economy on a war footing, mobilized 400,000 men, cranked up the Kremlin's propaganda machine, and taken repression of dissent to new post-Soviet heights. But none of that will win him the war. His heavily battered army seems incapable of making any meaningful advances against Ukrainian defensive lines. His only hope is that the Ukrainian people's determination to resist will waver, and that war fatigue will continue to build in Europe and the United States. Once the Western financial and military support has dried up, Ukrainian morale will evaporate, and his forces will be able to advance, imprisoning, deporting, or simply executing anyone who still resists. It is impossible to predict when this will happen. For now, Putin seems satisfied that he hasn't been militarily defeated yet. He is trying to exude confidence in his war effort, even though it is nowhere close to achieving any of his stated goals. But this performance can last only so long. Sooner or later, the grim reality of what he has done to Russia will become impossible to hide. One day, when Russia finally abandons Putin's neo-imperial illusion, it will start to focus on its own future as an independent nation-state among independent nation-states, including Ukraine and Belarus. Only then will it be possible to talk about peace. Pope Francis's suggestion that Ukraine's leaders should admit defeat, find the courage to raise the white flag, and negotiate a halt to the war with Russia provoked justified fury in Kiev and Eastern Europe. He was wrong to say Ukraine is beaten, and gravely remiss in failing to condemn Moscow's illegal aggression and war crimes. Yet Francis is not alone in wondering how this conflict ends. 2 years on, there's no sign of a winner. Maybe that's just as well, in the sense that outright victory for either side could be disastrous for all. Does this unheroic consideration tacitly influence the cautious approach of Kyiv's 2 biggest Western backers, the US and Germany? If so, it makes the absence of a credible peace process all the more regrettable and potentially very dangerous. Vladimir Putin again threatened to use nuclear weapons last week after France's president, Emmanuel Macron, said NATO should consider sending troops to ensure Ukraine prevails. Much of what Putin says is posturing or brinkmanship, for he believes time is on his side. He is letting the war simmer while he mounts a repeat coup this weekend, disguised as an election. But Putin was not so complacent 18 months ago, when advancing Ukrainian forces threatened to retake Crimea and expelled the invaders. So, according to Putin, Russia has no interest in other countries' invasion plan, not in Poland, Latvia, or any other country expat Ukraine. It was revealed last week that U.S. officials rushed radiation detectors and potassium iodine tablets to Kyiv, acting on intelligence estimates indicating a 50-50 chance of a Russian tactical nuclear strike to prevent Crimea from falling. So great was the concern that the White House asked a group of experts to devise a new nuclear playbook of contingency plans, optional American military responses, and escalation scenarios, the New York Times reported. All this was based on the calculation that a nuclear strike was more likely than at any time since the end of the Cold War. Though the risk has diminished since 2022, it's still high. As Maria Lipman, a seasoned political commentator, aptly puts it, the era of Putin may be nearing its end, but what comes next will be a true test of Russia's resilience and the world's response to this pivotal moment. War will continue according to Mr. Putin. It is clear that Russia wants more land of Ukraine, other than 20%, so Russia has already world's most land, but hope for more is present still. Now the question arose, why more land? So, the Russia and Ukraine both shared history. Ukraine has more agriculture land, economic resources, and more opportunities. In order to become again superpower country, Russia needs to conquer Ukraine resources